On a faraway planet, deep in the outer zone of the galaxy, there was a village built from metal and stone. The sky was always dark. The air smelled like dust and fire. This was not Earth. This was the planet Carnes, where silence was more dangerous than noise. In a small broken house on the edge of the village, there lived a girl named Aria. She had long black hair, glowing gray eyes, and soft steps like a shadow, but she never spoke. Not one word. The villagers called her the Silent Girl. Some said she was cursed. Some said she was broken. But no one cared to find out the truth. Not even her own stepfather. His name was Rourke. He was a strong man with cold eyes. He worked with machines and made deals with off-world traders. But he hated Aria. She is useless, he often said. A girl who doesn't talk is worth nothing, he shouted at her. He threw things. He laughed when she cried silently. But Aria never screamed, never spoke, never answered. One day, a human explorer came to the village. He wore black armor and a helmet that covered his face. His ship had landed just outside the cliffs. He came with tools, scanners, and gold stones. His name was Captain Dallin. He was looking for something. Something powerful. Rourke saw him as an opportunity. He walked up to the human and said, "You trade, yes? I have something rare. A girl, quiet as a ghost. Maybe useful for your Earth experiments." The human looked at him quietly. "She's mute?" "Completely," Rourke laughed. "Never spoke a word in years." Aria stood behind her stepfather, eyes down. She held a small bag with her clothes. Her face showed no fear, no emotion. Captain Dallin looked at her. His scanner made a soft beep. He tilted his head. "She's not sick," he said. "No sign of injury, no voice box damage." Rourke shrugged. "Still, she's yours now. Just give me food and a few gold chips." The human nodded. The trade was done. Rourke turned away without a second look. Aria followed Captain Dallin to his ship. She did not ask questions. She did not cry. She simply walked with him, like a shadow. Inside the ship, everything was quiet. The lights were soft blue. The doors closed with a hiss. Captain Dallin removed his helmet. He was a young man, maybe 30 years old. His eyes were sharp but kind. He turned to Aria and sat on a chair. He looked at her for a long time. She stood still. "You understand me?" he asked. Aria didn't move. "I know you can hear. My scanner says your brain is active, very active." Silence. He leaned forward. "I'm not going to hurt you. But I need to know something. Why did your heart rate go up when I stepped into the village?" Still, no answer. Captain Dallin sighed and looked down at his small data screen. "This planet hides something. The government sent me to find it. I think you know what it is." He didn't expect a reply. But then, a sound broke the silence, a soft voice. So soft, it was almost a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here." Dallin froze. His eyes went wide. He slowly turned his head toward her. "What did you say?" Aria looked up for the first time. Her gray eyes were glowing now, brighter than before. "You're not supposed to be here," she repeated, still calm. Dallin stood up. His scanner beeped again, now faster. "How do you know English?" he asked. Aria walked to the window. She looked out at the dark sky. Her voice came again, this time with a strange echo. "Because I was told to wait for someone like you." Captain Dallin didn't know what to say. He reached for his communicator. Double quotes command. "This is Captain Dallin. I need a status check. There's something unusual about the girl." No response. The communicator was dead. Aria turned toward him. "They can't hear you now," she said. "What do you mean?" "You've already crossed the line. There's no going back." Outside, the wind started howling. The ship's lights flickered. In the distance, strange shapes moved through the dust, like shadows walking. Captain Dallin slowly backed up. His hand reached for his weapon, but Aria only smiled, and for the first time. She spoke clearly. You were not supposed to come. But now that you're here, it begins." Captain Dallin stood frozen inside the ship while the girl named Aria watched him with eyes that knew too much for someone so young. She was not afraid of him, not curious, not even surprised. She had waited, and now she was speaking in perfect human language with a voice calm like water, but sharp like glass. Dallin tried to call command again, his fingers pressing the communicator, but the screen blinked with red lines, no signal, no feedback, just silence. He looked at Aria, again confused, tense, unsure if he should treat her as a threat or a key. Aria slowly walked to the ship's main console, her fingers moved over buttons. She should not understand, but the system responded to her as if she had done it before. Dallin asked, "Who taught you this?" She said, "No one." He asked, "How do you know my language?" She said, "I was born to know." The ship's monitor lit up, showing the map of the planet and blinking red dots in the southern mountains. Those dots had never shown before. Dallin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He had come to Carnes with a classified mission, not just to explore, but to locate an ancient vault said to contain lost technology older than all human history. No one believed it was real, not even him until now. Aria turned to him and said, "You are close but not ready." Her voice echoed again in the air, not through the walls, but through something deeper, something he couldn't explain. Checked her vital signs again, her DNA, her energy readings. They were strange, part human, part unknown. He had seen hundreds of alien species, scanned thousands of life forms, but nothing like hers. Was something new or something forgotten? He walked toward her slowly and asked, "Why did your stepfather give you away?" She looked down for a moment, then replied, "Because he fears what I might become." Dallin stepped back, trying to make sense of it all. He thought of his own orders, the warning from his commander, to avoid anything unnatural, to record and report only. But something told him he was no longer just an explorer. He was now part of something hidden, something buried deep in time. Suddenly, the ship shook, the lights blinked, the wind outside screamed louder, and something hit the hull. Aria whispered, "They found you." Dallin pulled his weapon, moved to the window, looked out into the dark storm. He saw nothing, just sand and shadows moving in strange patterns. Turned to Aria. "What are they?" She answered, "They're not alive, but they're not dead either. They come when someone touches the truth. You touched it. Now they come for you." Dallin's heart pounded, but he kept his eyes on her. "You said you waited for someone like me. What does that mean?" She stared back and said, "Not just someone like you. I waited for only you." Before he could speak again, the main door opened by itself, air rushing in, dust flying in, but no one was there. Only a small metallic box placed carefully on the ground just outside. Dallin pointed his scanner at it. It showed nothing, no heat, no signal, no data. He asked Aria, "Did you bring this?" She shook her head and said they did. Box clicked once, then opened. Inside was a silver cube with a glowing core pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Dallin stepped closer, drawn to it by some strange pull. His scanner went wild, numbers flying, colors changing too fast. Aria whispered again, "Don't touch it yet. It remembers you, but it doesn't know if it can trust you." Dallin backed away, confused. "How can a cube remember me?" "Because you've been here before," she said, "in another form, in another time." He laughed once, short and cold. "Is that a joke?" But Aria's face was serious, her eyes glowing again, this time with sadness. "You are not the first human to come here, but you are the first to return." Delan's hands shook as he looked at the cube again. Memories he didn't own flickered in his mind, images of war machines, voices, screaming, stars exploding. He looked back at Aria. "Who are you really?" She walked toward him slowly and said, "I am the one who was left behind to wait, to guide, to remind you of who you really are." The cube floated into the air, now spinning slowly around them. The ship's lights shut down, everything went quiet. Only Aria's voice remained, and she said, "Now it begins again, long before the human came, before the dust storm, before the cube awakened something darker. There was a deal made in shadows." Rourke, the stepfather, stood alone inside a hidden chamber under the village. Not many knew this place existed, only those who had something to sell or something to hide. His Hands were shaking, sweat dripping from his brow. Even though the room was cold, a tall figure stood across from him, face covered in a dark metallic mask, voice deep and unnatural, speaking in a language older than fire, yet Rourke understood every word. Bring her to the outsider, the masked one said. The silent one must leave this place before the sun blinks again. Rourke hesitated. He had kept her hidden, fed her, clothed her, not from kindness, but because he feared her, not from love, but from what she might become. You said you would help me, he whispered, eyes wide like a trapped animal. You said you would make the voices stop. The masked figure moved closer, its eyes glowing blue. Not help, only trade. Give the girl, receive peace. Rourke nodded slowly, guilt pressing against his chest like a stone too heavy to carry. But he wanted the voices to stop, the dreams, the nightmares, the cold whisper that called to him each night from under the floor. He remembered when Arya was just a child, small, silent, never crying, not even when injured. He remembered her mother too, the woman with silver eyes and strange tattoos, who died with a smile and a warning. She had whispered to Rourke before her last breath, protect her from the echo or lose everything. But Rourke was not a protector, he was a survivor, and survival sometimes means betrayal. The figure gave Rourke a small chip, silver in color, shaped like a tear. Press this to your skin, and the voices will end. Rourke took it with shaking fingers, eyes avoiding the glow of the masked being. I will do it. I will give her away. She means nothing to me. Figure leaned in closer. Then go now. The human waits. The time is near. She must not remember who she is, not yet. Back in the present, Rourke stood on the edge of the village, watching the human ship vanish into the dust cloud, a strange feeling in his stomach like ice crawling up his spine. He turned to leave, but something stopped him, a sound soft and cold like breath in the ear. She remembers. Rourke spun around, weapon in hand, eyes wide, heart racing, but no one was there, just wind and sand. But the voice came again, from the ground, from the sky, from inside his skull. Remembers. Rourke ran back to his house, doors locked, windows sealed, hands shaking as he grabbed the silver chip from his pocket. He pressed it to his skin. The pain was instant, like fire in his blood, like metal in his bones. He screamed, but no one came to help. Then silence, total and pure. The voices were gone, but something else had replaced them. Images flashing in his minda. City made of light, a war that bent the stars, a woman screaming, a child singing, a voice like thunder breaking worlds. Fell to his knees, gasping, eyes wide, seeing things that did not belong to him. Then he heard her voice, not from memory, not from fear, but real, alive, present. She said, you should not have sold me. He looked up, eyes full of terror. Arya stood in front of him, not a child, not a victim, not silent. She wore no expression, but her eyes were glowing brighter than the sun. How did you get back? He whispered, but his voice failed him. You thought I was just a girl, she said. You thought I was broken, but I was only waiting for the right moment. The walls around them began to shake, the floor cracked, light bleeding from the corners of the room like the building itself was afraid. Rourke crawled back, hands trembling. Please, he begged. I didn't know I was promised peace. I was promised silence, and now you will have it, she replied. She raised one hand and the chip on his skin melted into smoke. His body froze, eyes locked open, and then silence. Arya turned and walked into the storm, her hair dancing with the wind, her presence bending the very space around her, above her in the sky. The human ship hovered, scanning, pulsing, alive with questions. Captain Dallin watched her through the window, unable to speak, unable to move. Because in that moment he knew she was not just a girl, she was the echo that had been waiting, and now she was awake. The storm moved like a living thing, swallowing the hills, the sky, the sun, everything buried under wind and ash. Captain Dallin followed the girl without speaking, without questioning, because something inside him said. She knew the path. He had forgotten something his memory did not hold, but his body did. Arya walked ahead, her eyes glowing softly, the dust never touching her, her steps light but full of weight, as if the ground itself listened to her. They reached the edge of a cliff where the wind stopped, where time felt slower. Here, she whispered. Dallin scanned the area but saw nothing, no cave, no entrance, just stone and silence. She knelt, placed her hand on the ground and sang, not with words not with voice, but with tone a hum that made the air tremble and the rock respond. Lines of light spread under her. Fingers across the stone like veins waking up from sleep. The earth cracked, the ground opened a wide circle revealing a staircase made of black metal leading down into the unknown. Dallin hesitated. She looked back and said, "If you want to understand what you are, follow me." He stepped in without thinking. The air changed as they moved down, colder, older, heavy with memories not his own. Walls were smooth, glowing, with symbols shifting slowly like they were alive. Dallin touched one and saw a flash. A vision of a sky burning, ships falling, people running, a tower of glass turning to fiery. Gasped, pulled back. Aria said, "Don't touch unless you're ready. They show you everything." They reached the end of the stairs and entered a room too large to fit underground, yet it was there, silent, endless, glowing blue machines hung from the ceiling, breathing, lights pulsing slowly like sleeping giants waiting for a commanding. The center, a table shaped like a ring floating above the floor, humming softly. Aria walked to it, placed her palm in the center. The table lit up, responded to her, showed a map of the galaxy, but with new marks. Ancient marks hidden from human eyes. Dallin stepped closer, eyes wide. "This place is older than Earth, older than any species we know." She nodded. "This was built before memory, before time as you count." I asked, "Why bring me here? Why now?" She looked at him and said, "Because it belongs to you." Shook his head, confused. "I'm not from here. I was born on Mars, raised on a station. I've never seen this." She said, "Not in this life, but once before, long ago. You were one of the builders." He laughed, a short, broken sound. "Impossible. I'm just a man, just a pilot." The machines heard him and began to move, screens flickering, metal shifting, sounds rising like they recognized his voice, his presence, his soul. Aria said, "You don't remember because you were never meant to, but the war changed everything. We had to hide the truth even from ourselves." Dallin watched the map zoom in on one planet glowing red with warning signs. It pulsed once, then faded. "What is that?" he asked. She said, "The vault, the final lock, the place where everything began and where it will end." He turned to her, eyes filled with fear and wonder. "Who are you, really?" She stepped back, light forming around her body, lines, symbols floating off her skin like dust. She said, "I was made to guard the gate. I was not born, I was activated." Dallin's breath caught. "You're not human." "No," she replied, "but I was built with part of your kind. That is why I can feel what you feel, why I waited." Machines around them began to shake, alarms blinking in languages long forgotten. "They found us," she said. "It's too early, but they know." Now Dallin drew his weapon, but it felt useless. Here, like a toy in the hands of a child, the wall behind them opened, revealing a long hallway filled with light and a sound like distant thunder. Growing closer, Aria looked at him, eyes fierce. "This is no longer a mission, it's a memory returning." Dallin whispered, "What do I do?" She said, "Remember." And then she ran. He followed without choice, without doubt, because now he knew this was not about a girl, not about a war, not about a planet. It was about something buried in him, and it was waking up. The hallway stretched like a tunnel through time, glowing walls, breathing with hidden life, whispering in forgotten tongues. Captain Dallin followed Aria as her footsteps echoed like memories across the floor. His heart beat louder than the storm above, then the wail machines behind, then his thoughts unraveling with every step. He had questions, but none strong enough to pass his lips, because deep down he feared the answers. They reached a wide circular chamber with no ceiling, just darkness above, like space itself had lowered into this room. In the center, a tall mirror, not made of glass, not metal, not light, but something older, something that pulsed like a heart and shimmered like a dream. Aria walked to it, placed both hands upon the surface, and closed her eyes. The mirror responded slowly, its skin rippling, then shifting, then pulling back like a curtain. Behind it, a memory waited. Memory that was alive. Dallin stepped forward, drawn like gravity itself, pulling him into the truth. He saw a city made of crystal towers, humming in the sky, ships floating like leaves across light rivers, people with eyes like stars walking together, smiling, building, and then flames, fire from nowhere, ships burning, towers falling, screams echoing through the galaxy like thunder that never stopped. And at the center of it all stood a figure. It was him. Like now not in human flesh, but in armor made of energy, surrounded by beings that bowed to him, followed him, feared him. Were their leader Arya whispered and their destroyer Dallin. Stepped back, breath, shaking, heart thundering. I didn't do this. I don't remember this. You weren't supposed to, she said. That was the deal. What deal? He asked, eyes wide, hands trembling. She turned to him and her voice softened. When the war ended, when the vault closed, when the screen tore through the stars, we had a choice: erase it all or repeat it again. We chose to forget. You chose to forget. Dallin stared at her, felt the room shift, felt the air crackle around his skin. You're saying I was one of them? No, she said. You were the one they followed, the one who tried to save them, but failed. You buried the vault, you sealed the memory, you left a part of yourself behind, so you could be reborn when the time was right. It was right. He looked down at his hands, looked at the mirror, looked at the city burning behind the glass, and said, why now? Why me again? Because the vault is opening, she said, and they will come for it. They will come for you. They will come for me. Who are they? He asked. The forgotten ones. She replied, the ones we locked away, the ones who never forgave you. Turned to her, his voice shaking. Why me? Not someone stronger, smarter, more prepared? Because you carry the last key, she said, and you still have a choice. He walked closer to her now. Not afraid, not angry, just broken and real. What happens if I don't remember? He asked then. We all fall again, she answered, and this time there will be no second chance. The chamber began to tremble, light pulsing through the walls, machines coming alive. Warnings flashing in symbols only Arya could read. They're coming, she said. They followed the echo in your blood. Dallin reached toward the mirror, his hand glowing now, lines forming across his skin, like the ancient ones in the visions. He felt pain, then power, then something else, something soft, something pure. He turned to Arya and said, what are you? She looked at him, eyes full of starlight. I am what you left behind, the last part of your promise, to protect the vault, to protect the future and you. She asked, what are you now? He didn't speak, but the mirror did it. Lit up brighter than a star, sending out a beam into the sky, through the rock, through the storm, past the clouds. A signal, the signal. He looked at his hands again, glowing now with memory, with fire, with something he once was. And in that moment, he remembered his name, not Dallin but Kale, one who closed the gate, the one who must open it again. The signal had been sent, and the stars were no longer quiet. The sky above the planet cracked like old glass clouds, folding into themselves, light spilling through in colors not found in nature. Arya stood beside Kale, no longer Dallin, no longer uncertain. His name now returned, his blood awake, his hands glowing with memory and power he had once sealed away. They stood in silence as the storm parted above, and the first ship appeared, long and sharp, blacker than space itself. Its engine made no sound, but its presence screamed through the wind. Arya whispered, they are here. Kale did not flinch. He had seen these ships before, in another life, in another war. They were not invaders. They were punishers. They came not to conquer, but to erase. The ground beneath them rumbled as the lab above collapsed, machines shutting down, lights fading back into sleep, the old world sinking once more into the dust. Arya and Kale were already moving through the lower tunnels, past walls that remembered them, opening with soft pulses of recognition. Systems coming online in their presence, ancient programs reactivated by old blood. He asked how many. She replied, enough to end us. They entered a chamber filled with suits of armor, not metal, not fabric, but something living, something built from thought and war and sacrifice. Each suit had a name, each one had a voice that had not spoken in centuries. Kale placed his hand on one, and the suit wrapped around him like memory, like fate, sealing itself to his skin and whispering, welcome back, Commander. Arya stepped forward, her own armor forming not from the wall, but from herself, her skin folding into plates, her veins lighting with code, her voice now deeper, steadier. Not human, not machine, but something between. Kale said, we are not ready. Arya said, we never were. Above them, the ships landed, shadowed figures emerging from the dust, walking slowly, weapons in hand, faces hidden by masks shaped like screams. They carried no fear, no mercy, no questions. They were here to destroy the echo before it reached. The vault, Kale and Arya rose from the underground light, lifting them into the sky. Their bodies glowing brighter than the sun, their presence felt across the valley like a wave of thunder. First shot was silent, a beam of pure light aimed at Arya. Fast, precise, meant to end her before the war could begin, but Kale moved faster. He raised his arm, and the air bent around him. The beam struck an invisible field and shattered into sparks. The enemies paused, confused for a moment. They did not expect resistance. They did not expect him. He raised his voice, and it carried across the battlefield. "I am Kale of the Vault, I remember." Ground answered his call. Machines buried for ages rose again, wings unfolding, weapons activating, memories reloaded. Into cold steel minds, Arya stepped forward, her voice wrapping the air like silk, like fire. She said, "Leave or be unmade." Invaders replied by charging forward, not with rage, but with certainty, like they had done this before, like they had already. One, Kale and Arya met them in the center of the field. The battle was not like any war humans knew. There were no bullets, no bombs, only will, only light, only sound that cracked the sky. Kale moved like a storm, punching through machines, twisting gravity, turning enemy weapons into dust with a thought. Arya sang her way through them, her voice splitting metal, her steps rewriting the rules of motion, her hands shaping the world as she moved. But the enemies kept coming, more ships, more soldiers, more shadows. Kale began to weaken, his armor cracked, his hands shaking. The memory was strong, but the body was still human, still limited, still breaking. He fell to one knee, breath heavy, vision fading. Arya screamed, not in pain but in defiance, and the sound shook the valley, trees bending, sky bleeding. The enemies pausing for just a second. She ran to Kale, knelt beside him, held his face in her hands. "You must get to the vault," she said. "I will hold them." "No," he said, "not again, not alone. You must," she replied, "or everything ends." The sky opened wider now, and from it descended the final ship, massive, ancient, shaped like a blade big enough to cut the world in. Kale stood again, powered by her touch, by her voice, by the truth of who he was. He looked at the ship and remembered its name. It was called Silence, and it had come to erase the last sound of the old world. But Kale was not ready to be silent, not anymore. The sky burned above them as the ship called. Silence lowered itself onto the ruined valley, its shadow covering mountains, its engines humming like ancient hymns meant for ending, not beginning. Arya stood at the edge of the cliff, her armor cracked, her voice silent. Her eyes locked on the giant that had come to erase her, the world, the vault, and all memory tied to what once was. Kale stood beside her, breathing heavy, body broken, but soul fully awake. The name Kale no longer just a word, but a weight, a vow, a key. They were not just two beings, not just soldier and guardian, not just human and something more. They were the last echo of a war the universe tried to forget. Below them, the enemies gathered, machines of perfect form, beings without faces, ships that moved like thought, weapons that could bend time, ready to strike, ready to end. Arya reached into the cinder air and pulled nothing into something, a sphere of light forming in her palm, spinning gently like a star waiting to be born. Kale said, "It's time." She nodded and looked at him once more, her voice not yet spoken, her purpose not yet complete. He said, "If we fall together." She said, "No, if I fall, you rise." And then she walked toward the center of the valley, where the enemy waited, where the ship called Silence hung like a god in the sky. They watched her come forward, one girl, one light, no army, no shield, no threat. But she was not there to fight, she was there to speak. She stepped onto the old stone that once held the first gate, the place where the vault had been locked long ago. When stars still bled and worlds still cried, the ground remembered her. The wind stilled, the storm paused, even the ship above stopped moving, like the entire galaxy held its breath. Arya looked up at the sky, and for the first time since creation spoke her full voice. It was not sound, it was not words, it was a wave, a storm, a memory wrapped in power, wrapped in light. She said, "I remember you all," and the world heard her. Enemies staggered as their weapons dropped, as their hands trembled, as their perfect forms cracked under the weight of her truth. She said, "You were not made for silence, you were made for choice." The ship called Silence shook its hull, crying out its language. Broken its orders, undone. Cale watched from above, his heart shaking, not from fear, but from awe. She was not just the girl he had met. She was not just the one left behind. She was the voice of the forgotten, the protector of the vault, the last song of a war that never truly ended. She floated into the air, her body now pure energy, her arms wide, her eyes like stars born in fire. She said, "This is not your ending. This is your return." And the ship screamed, a soundless scream that cracked the cliffs toward the sky. But it was too late. Vault opened, not with force, but with acceptance. The light within rose like a sun, and from it came not weapons, not armies, but memories. Truth poured across the valley into every mind, human, alien, machine dream. It showed them what was lost, what was hidden, what was locked away so long ago. Cale saw himself again, but not as a warrior, not as a commander, as a builder, as a protector, as a man who had once loved the world enough to forget himself for it. And now he remembered. Arya turned one last time. Her voice soft, her form fading into light. She said, "You know the way now." And then she was gone, not dead, returned. The ship called Silence broke apart, not in explosion, but in peace, metal folding into dust, fading into air. The enemies vanishing one by one, not destroyed, but forgiven. Sky cleared, the stars returned. Cale stood alone now, but not truly alone. He looked at the vault glowing, softly breathing like a heart. He whispered, "Thank you," and the wind answered, "You're welcome." Far above, the stars moved again. Galaxy breathed again, and somewhere deep within all things, the voice remained, not silent, not forgotten, but waiting.